Welcome, welcome to today's live. It's what's today? Thursday already. Wow, the 20th of June. I was gonna say Tuesday, but it's Thursday. So this week has definitely gone by. Is it Thursday? Yeah, I think it's Thursday. Man, she can't even. It's Thursday. Wow, so quick, so quick. Almost at the end of June. Welcome to Finish First Financially's live stream. Goran Radanovic here. Today, I wanted to talk about debt because I think it's such a big thing in most people's lives. It's a big burden. It's something that sticks around for a very long time, in some cases forever. And some people just have to deal with it. And maybe they've even been passed on debt from the previous generation, which is unfortunate if that's happened. But I think a lot of people do a really bad job on their own of acquiring debt. So they don't really need any more help of getting it from other people. I used to be in a lot of debt. At the time, it was $40,000, although that doesn't sound like much today. Just keep in mind that at the time I was homeless. I had no income, no savings, literally living on the street in my car. So that was an extremely difficult situation to be in. And I needed a plan. I wanted to get out of debt. I knew that there was no ways that I could be financially free if I had debt. It was just going to bring me down. I don't believe that good debt exists. When I see these so-called gurus, financial gurus, where they say they're up to their eyeballs in debt, but they've got so much gold they don't know what to do with. Okay, if that's the case, if you got so much gold, then use that gold to pay off your debt so that you're actually rich, because net worth is assets minus liabilities. It's not just assets. So I don't really listen to those people, to be completely honest. If you've got debt and you claim to be a financial guru, I'm not going to listen to you, honestly, because first of all, debt is the number one enemy of financial freedom. It's impossible to be financially free if you have debt. I don't care how big the asset side of your balance sheet is. If you have debt, clear it up first, and then I'll take you seriously. That's really what it is. That's how I feel. If you really want to convince me that you understand finances, pay off your debts, and then save up a lot of money. So let's see that first before yeah I listen to you, to be completely frank. So I got out of debt about 2 years ago, just a little less than 2 years ago. It took me, I think, about 6 years, 6 to 7 years to pay off my debt. And at the time, as I said, it was $40,000, no income, no savings, living on the street. So how did I do it? What was the thing that I've spoken about income. I think it was on yesterday, the day before, on the live stream where I said, multiple streams of income is the way to go. Reduce your expenses so that you can save up a lot of money, and that's really, so you can dedicate much more money than what you otherwise would to debt. And so that was what I did to increase my income. I got several clients in different industries, and I had multiple streams of income to secure myself, decrease my expenses by living the minimalist lifestyle, and then started paying off my debts. But what was the exact thing that I did in terms of debt? So, because I was homeless, I wanted to ensure that that never happened to me again. Right. So I thought, what use is it for me to pay off debt if now all of a sudden my income stops and I'm not able to replace that income? What am I going to do? Yeah, okay, great. I've kept up with all of my debt payments. I'm up to date, but now I don't have any income. I don't have any savings. I can't replace my income immediately. So what am I going to do if that happens? And that's why I decided to have a safety net. And I wanted as big of a safety net as possible. So I decided to first save up 6 months of essential expenses. I wanted to be able to cover my expenses for 6 months, the essential ones, in case my income stopped, so that I didn't end up on the street again. So, I think 6 months is a good period because it can take you 3-4 months to replace your income or just find another job. It doesn't necessarily have to be the exact position that you were in. It can take time to find any job. So I thought 3-4 months, that's what it should take. I want to give myself some breathing room so that I'm not like really pressured. If I had saved up only 3 months, I think that would have been too tight. I just would have, 6 months was like, I think a sufficient amount of time and I started looking immediately, if it had happened where I had lost my income, or even if I had lost a client, I had like 3 or 4 clients and I lost one, I'd immediately start looking for the next one so that I'd be able to replace that client. So I don't want to be under pressure. I gave myself 6 months of essential expenses, which are rental mortgage, utilities, that's your electricity, water, and so forth, and food and transportation. Those are the main expenses that you need in order to carry on living. Everything else is actually a luxury, any other expense, if you really think about it. So you need a roof over your head, you need to pay the electricity, you need food, and then you need transportation to get to work. And when I say transportation, I meant like public money for public transport, not for now having a car and filling up with gas, and that's a significant expense. So I secured myself like that by saving up 6 months to cover those essential expenses. I thought that was really crucial. And I also saved up, I was more than $3,000, but I'll just say $3,000. $3,000 is what I usually say for an emergency fund. An emergency fund is really something that crops up that's unforeseen. So if a window breaks, if a water pipe bursts, I don't want to take money from my uh, essential expenses savings account to fund emergencies. Emergencies are different. Remember, only if I lose my income do I use that money from the 6 months of essential expenses account that I've saved. Anything else, I need to make a different account. So I made a different account for emergencies. So I had about more than $3,000, but let's just say, $2,000 so that you can cover like 2 emergencies if they crop up, or even if one, which can be a bit expensive. So I had my emergency fund, had my 6 months of essential expenses covered. And during that time, while I was saving up this money, I was paying some of the debts. And on the bigger ones, which I couldn't really do, I kind of didn't make the minimum payments, made some payments, and then delayed some of the payments just so I could, get some breathing room to save up this money, because I just come off the street, literally. I didn't want to go back. So I thought, geez, if I'm paying my debt and the bank is happy and everyone's happy, but then I end up homeless because I didn't have a savings account, well, what about me? Who's going to make me happy? But this way, if I had, the savings, I could look for work and then start repaying my debts. In that scenario, everybody wins, as opposed to me going back out onto the street. Then I wouldn't have money, the bank wouldn't be paid by me, and nobody wins. So that was my strategy to cover myself and to ensure that I was going to make payments, all of my debts. And then once I started paying off the debts, so there were payments while I was making these savings, and then once I saved up to 6 months of essential expenses and emergency fund, I wanted I looked at all of my debts and I made a list of all of them in the order. I put all of my debts in order that I wanted to repay them. And the first one that I decided to repay was my vehicle finance. If you look at what the average American is paying for vehicle finance on a monthly basis, for a used car, it's $500. For a new car, it's $700. That doesn't include gas, insurance, license and registration, all these other things that come along with car ownership. So for me, my car payments were 30% of my salary. That's a tremendous amount of money that I was dedicating to a machinery that was a liability. It was depreciating. So, because my priorities were messed up, I valued the status and comfort thing that I talk about as opposed to saving. And that's why I spent 30% of my income on a stupid car. I mean, it was a great car, but it was just digging me into a financial hole and wasn't a good thing. So it eventually got repossessed because I couldn't make monthly payments on them, but I still had this debt that was outstanding. And the bank eventually ended up selling the car at an auction, but the amount that they sold it for was less than what the outstanding loan was. And I just wanted to get rid of that. I didn't want to have any car expenses, so I paid off the vehicle finance first. That even if my car hadn't been repossessed, even if I had it, that still would have been the first debt that I would have repaid off. I probably would have sold my car to lower the debt that I owe, and then if there was an outstanding amount, would have just paid that off. That was pretty much more or less what happened in a way, except that I didn't sell the car, the bank did. And because I didn't want to have those expenses, I didn't want to spend 30% of my income on a car. It was just ridiculous. I wanted to save as much money at the end of the month so that I could dedicate it to my other debt so I can pay it off as quickly as possible, because the sooner I pay off all of my debt, the sooner I can start saving money. And the repayment of the debt is always the most grueling part. That's what feels long. It's exhausting. It just feels like it's never ending. You can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But then once I paid off all of my debt and I no longer had all of these payments going out to creditors, then all of that money was going into savings. So the savings part, that portion, happens rapidly. You can save a significant amount of money. And that's exactly what happened to me. Because I no longer had all of these payments going out to creditors, it was just going into my savings account, which was compounding. So that's the important thing about a savings, getting out of debt so that you can build significant savings. So that was the first debt that I repaid. And then I started with the smallest debt. That was because, so the first one was the vehicle finance, then I went into the smallest one. I needed to build up some momentum. This is what I talk about, building up momentum when it comes to doing anything really, whether you're writing a book like I am at the moment, whether you're paying off debt, you need to build up momentum. And momentum really means doing the same thing over and over again, whether it be daily, monthly, where I'm writing a book, I write it daily. If you pay off debt, you pay it off weekly or monthly, but that has to happen. It's a discipline that happens. So I just built up that momentum, and I wanted to also prove to myself that I could do this. So by paying off the smallest debt, after paying off the vehicle finance, I kind of was starting to get into that momentum. When I paid it off and I felt better, I felt some relief. There was still a mountain ahead of me that I had to climb, but at least I had taken a couple of steps towards it. And then I paid off the second smallest one, and then the third smallest one, and then eventually the last one, which was a personal loan. That was the biggest one. That was the grueling part, and it just felt like I was never going to pay it off. That was the majority of the $40,000 that I owed. And I just kept at it, kept increasing my income as well while maintaining the same expenses that I had for years. Even though my income was increasing significantly, my expenses stayed the same because I wanted to dedicate as much money to the debt as possible. And I was just saving on the side for this particular debt to pay it off. And I was paying it off monthly, but I was also dedicating money to an account so that I could eventually get to a point where I could just pay it off. And that point came in November 2022. I built up enough money and I said I'm going to make a lump sum payment, and that will be that. That's exactly what I did. Paid off that last debt, and it felt amazing. It truly felt amazing. It was just wonderful. Knowing that I wake up in the morning, and nobody's going to call me to ask for their money. So it used to happen so much when I was in debt, especially because I defaulted. So it was like collections was calling me all the time. Lawyers were calling me all the time. And I just got sick of it. I just had constant headaches, and they were taking up so much of my time. It's not like there was one of them. It was like several of them calling me every single day. So I got tired of that. And then obviously they were threatening me with lawsuits and all kinds of things. So I paid it off and I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. And I said to myself, never, ever again. I'm never taking out debt. This is a mess. I'm not going to do that to myself. So that's kind of the gist of it. I wrote an article on finishfirstfinancially.com called Here's How I Paid Off $40,000 in Debt. Obviously, everything that I say is not financial or investment advice. I just share my experiences. This is purely for entertainment purposes. So it's up to you what you do. But let's just read the article. When did I write it? I wrote it February this year. Okay, so I said, having debt gave me countless headaches. Lawyers used to bombard me with calls threatening to blacklist me, sue me, and even extract money by garnishing my salary. I hated that period of my life and swore never to take on debt after I paid it off. I'm debt-free now, and I can tell you that it's one of the best things I've ever done. There is no way that I'll go into debt ever again, especially not necessary when you've got cash, when it's much easier which is much easier to save when you don't have debt. Yeah, absolutely. When you don't have payments, you've got money. My debt consisted of vehicle finance, credit cards, overdraft, personal loan, and several other smaller debts. The total debt was $40,000 in 2017. That might not sound like a lot to owe when compared to other people's debt, but it is when you're homeless. Yep, I was homeless and in debt. The road to freedom. There is nothing more liberating than being debt-free. When you have debt, you may feel like you're chained to your work desk. Your motivation for going to work is to pay off debt for the most part. Let's be completely honest. I mean, you might love your job, but do you love it more than your family? Would you much rather spend time with your family than go to work or doing activities that you love, hobbies and traveling, whatever it is? Would you not much rather want to do that as opposed to going to work? Of course you would. Yeah, but you don't really have the luxury of choosing that because you're in debt. You probably don't even have any significant savings. And even if you do, that should be dedicated to debt anyway. So now you just have to work. You have to work for years and years, especially if you have a mortgage. You're just going to be working for the next 20, 30 years. And that's the reality. That's the reality for many people. But at the end of the day, to be completely honest, you choose your life. You choose the way you live it. You can be debt-free, or you can just accumulate debt like most people and never get out of it and just have that constant stress, constant burden, because subconsciously, it eats at you. You think about it. The fact that you've got debt, you know that you have to go to work, whether you love it or not. You're stuck to that desk for the next 20, 30 years to pay it off. And that's what it is. Sure, you may love your job, but let's be real. If you don't have debt, there's a chance you may opt for part-time work, changing your career, or even starting your business. All of those options are much riskier when you're in debt. Absolutely. If they don't work out, you'll still have a dark cloud of debt looming over you. When you're debt free, you're more likely to pursue those ventures. How did I pay off my debt while I was homeless? Okay, so the safety net that I spoke about. A friend of mine offered me a place to stay, so I was no longer on the street, but I was unemployed, broke, and in debt while living with him. Once I eventually found a job, a low paying one, I might add, I was desperate, so I took the first offer after months of searching. I wanted to make sure that I was never homeless again. I knew that I needed a safety net in case I lost my income. The first thing I did was save up for 6 months of essential expenses: rent, mortgage, utilities, and food. Those three expenses are crucial for survival. Technically, you can survive on the street, but I would not recommend exploring that option. It's all good and well to start paying off your debt immediately, but what happens if halfway into your debt repayment, you lose your income and are without a safety net? That's when you'll likely regret the decision of not having savings to replace your income until you find another job. In that situation, you won't be able to continue paying your debt and you won't have money to survive. That's a tough spot to be in. So that's what I was talking about earlier, not having an income and you don't have any savings. So now you can't even pay debt, you can't even pay your rent, can't pay anything. So that's why I was really adamant about having that safety net. That was really important to me. The 6 month savings is crucial for anyone to have, even if you don't have debt, but it's even more dire for those who are in debt. Around 60% of Americans at the time of writing are living paycheck to paycheck. Just think about how scary that is. Some of those people are one paycheck away from living on the street. Don't let that be you. Ensure you have a safety net. So the first debt I paid, my luxury BMW cost me 30% of my monthly salary. That includes the vehicle finance payment, gas, insurance, repairs, and maintenance. That is a tremendous amount to pay for an asset, in air quotes, that depreciates. I was nuts, I know, but I thought that I was so cool. It turns out that I wasn't. There's nothing cool about being broke and homeless. When I went belly up financially and was forced to vacate my apartment, I parked my car next to a building and lived in it. Unfortunately for me, I had already defaulted on 3 months of installments when I had moved into my car. That sounds funny now, but wasn't back then. Why did I write that? Oh, about moving into my car. And the bank repossessed my car a few weeks later. Even though the bank sold my car at an auction, the selling price was lower than the outstanding loan. I paid the difference and promised myself never to buy a car on credit ever again. And I haven't. It's been the last 7 years. I've got cash to buy a car, but I haven't even bought one. It's been 6 years since then. I still wouldn't consider vehicle finance ever again. Not having to pay gas, insurance, and other costs related to vehicle ownership helped me to dedicate that money to my other debt. The second debt I paid and the road forward. The second debt I paid off was my smallest one, furniture. After paying off the vehicle, I think, there was even a smaller one. I think my credit card was, not credit card, cell phone contract. I think that was it. But these were one of the smallest ones. I still had 4 other loans to pay. Looking at the total amount of the debt made me feel I would never pay it off. So I needed encouragement. Paying off the furniture loan gave me the satisfaction of ticking another loan off my list. It showed me that it was possible to pay everything off if I tackled one loan at a time. Once I paid off the smallest loan, I had money that I no longer spent on my vehicle finance and furniture payments. That money was dedicated to paying off the second smallest loan. I think those credit cards. And the process went on until the final debt. My biggest debt was a personal loan. I had borrowed it to open a nightclub. It took me 6 years to pay off the $40,000 loan. I made a lump sum payment for the personal loan, and I'll never forget that day. It felt like chains had lifted around my neck, and I was free for the first time in years. Yeah, that's actually what it felt like. It's like you're suffocating when you're in debt, especially when you don't have money to pay for it. I just thought about it now. I'll put myself in that situation again. Just so frustrated and you're unhappy and you set off by the smallest thing that happens to you throughout the day because this debt is weighing you down. People are calling you, they want their money, and you really want to pay them. I wanted to pay them, I just didn't have the money. So it was just a very frustrating period in my life, just really tough. That feeling was so amazing that I promised myself never to go into debt and to show other people that they don't have to live with debt. It's been normalized to be in debt for most of your life. That's the sentiment in society because that has become a way of life for most people. It doesn't have to be that way. What helped me to complete the journey? All right, so paying off debt is a destination, but its journey is filled with peaks and valleys. You feel great when you pay off one debt, but the rug is pulled under your feet when you see how much you have left to pay. That's one of the reasons that it's so important to pay off your debt as soon as possible. In most cases, it takes years to pay off debt. During that period, interest gets added to the debt, which prolongs your journey. You could also lose your income, disabling you from paying off your debt. You need to dedicate as much money as possible to debt. The longer it takes to pay off debt, the more likely you are to give up. So that's the thing that I spoke about momentum. Even when you're paying it off, it just feels long. It's like you see all of this money is going out of your account, but you feel like you haven't even made any dent in it. It's just so much. And just keep going. That's the important thing. I know what that feels like. It's like you don't feel any change. You feel like you're not making any progress, but you are. Every bit counts, and just stick with it, and it's gonna definitely pay off. So that's what I did, and that's why I spoke about momentum. It's so important to keep it up, but obviously you want to pay off your debt as soon as possible because the longer this drags on, the more you're likely to give up, and then you could also lose your income. So even if you have the intention of paying it off and seeing this thing through, you might not be able to. And yeah, so that's one of the reasons that I was gonna say, how do you pay it off quicker? Well, that really comes down to increasing your income as much as possible and decreasing your expenses. Understand that it's not possible to increase your income tomorrow or in the next week in most people's cases. But what you've got complete control over are your expenses, and you can decrease most of them, if not all. And there are expenses that you can completely eliminate. So that will give you more money to dedicate to debt. So where was it? You need to dedicate as much money as possible to debt. The longer it takes to pay off debt, the more likely you are to give up. After paying your debt for a year or two and then looking at the remaining balance, you're likely to be put off by the prospect of continuing. It feels like the debt-free day will never come. It will, and you can expedite the process. And the way to do that is by living a minimalist lifestyle. The more money you have at the end of the month, the more you can dedicate to debt and pay it off faster. I eliminated all the expenses that were necessary for survival, such as vacations, new clothing, and entertainment. I know this is extreme. But just remember, the reason you're likely in debt is because of those expenses. So now it's time to correct those mistakes if you want to get out of debt as soon as possible. As I mentioned at another live stream, there are people who literally, I heard they get packages from Amazon every single day. I'm like, what are you buying? Every single day from Amazon. I've never gotten a package from Amazon, and I only buy books from Amazon. So all of these gadgets that you're collecting, you're hoarding, and all of these things that you don't really need, those are the things that have now made you part ways with money. So get that money back by selling that junk that took money away from you. At least recover something so you can dedicate it to debt. So this is really how I paid off the 40K in debt and then managed to save up 50,000. So, but obviously once I had paid off the debt, it was much easier to save. It was much easier, much quicker to save up that money. Probably like 3 times quicker because I had no longer had all of these debt payments. That money that I was using to pay off debts now was going into savings. So that helped me tremendously. All right, so 7 a.m. Monday to Friday, live streams here on YouTube. And I'll post, obviously, all of these episodes onto the podcast platforms. I'm going to try and stick to the 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time schedule Monday to Friday. But if I don't, that's because I've got a business to run. So I'm doing other things as well. But otherwise, I will probably catch you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Bye. Bye bye.